last week while I was on vacation, every once in a while I'd look at the news and I get all pissed off. Cardinal Mahony, who I thought was dead, but is not. He's, as John Manley's press release puts it, the disgraced cardinal. He's the guy who covered up all the child sex abuse, all the child rape that his priests were committing for decades. And Mahony was eventually forced out, and he's been in some kind of limbo ever since. But they resurrected him as the official L.A. Archdiocese representative to Rome for Pope Francis's funeral. And John Manley, who represented many of the sex abuse victims here in L.A. County, was angry with that. I was angry with that. Let's get John Manley on, and we could both shout at each other. John, how are you?
Hey, John. How are you?
I'm all right. No, I was smacking myself in the head when I saw this.
Yeah, it's you just can't believe it. You just, when you think, they're turning a corner, they bring this man who's a cardinal out of Los Angeles, where he's not allowed to have any public ministry, according to the current Archbishop, because of his crimes against children. He allowed, for example, Father Michael Baker, who was a prolific pedophile, who went to Mahony in 1988 and said, "I'm having sex with kids." And he said, "Oh, okay, go to therapy." Came back, put him back in a parish, and he molested more kids. I represented him. I know the toll. And he has the honor of witnessing the closing of Francis's casket at the funeral, and then discloses that he was very close to the Pope and exchanged many, many letters with him over the years and blah, blah, blah. So what does that tell us? It tells us that, number one, apparently Pope Francis wasn't offended by his behavior, which is troubling. And number two, I think the most important thing is, what message does that send to other bishops and cardinals throughout the world who are covering this up or who might cover it up? And the answer is, nothing's going to happen. And the victims out there of the priests he concealed and they allowed to molest, how do they feel? I've spoken to a couple of them, and they don't feel good. And it just is sad. And I think institutions are important, and the church has an important role to play. But these bishops are who they are, and I don't think anything's going to really change, and it makes me sad.
I remember, because, this is going back over 20 years ago, but we had a source who sent us 60 emails of Cardinal Mahony actively covering up.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. We broke that story. It was an exclusive story, and covering up with his staff members information regarding the priests who had been raping children. He wanted to keep it away from the media.
And frankly, if anybody else, imagine if Southwest Airlines was covering up for pedophile flight attendants, and those emails were leaked. Not only would the DA have been involved and people have been indicted, the FBI would have been involved, the U.S. Attorney would have been involved. Here, nothing happened to him. Some priests went to jail, not many, but some, and he just walked free, and he continues to live this luxurious life where he flies first class to Rome and people kiss his ring. And the truth is, he's a criminal, and he's a criminal who protected pedophiles, who gets to close the casket of the Pope. And it makes you wonder. I remember some priest telling me as a kid, "What would Jesus do?" I don't know, man. I don't think Jesus would be too happy about that, but maybe that's just me.
You would hope that Jesus would say, "What the hell is he doing here?"
Yeah.
Why isn't he completely kicked out of the church?
Some of us think that Jesus is still present in the church, but I don't think he's particularly happy with the bishops and cardinals, or frankly, popes that have been presided over this.
Because he's a criminal, but he's not a criminal like he embezzled $1 million. He's a criminal who covered up child rape that went on for decades. That kind of criminal.
Yeah, I'm not much on quoting the Bible, but I do remember from the nuns in St. Catherine's Military School who were German drilled into me is that Matthew's Gospel says, it would be better to throw yourself with a rock into the sea than to hurt one of my little ones. It's from Matthew's Gospel. I often told judges that and mediators and things like that, and they just seem to have forgotten that. The rest, I just don't understand how an institution can hurt children on this scale and still be regarded as legitimate. And that's not to say that I'm not talking about the faithful, and I'm not talking about their beliefs. I'm talking about the leadership. And
why do you want him representing your faith and your beliefs?
That's exactly the question, and the answer is troubling, isn't it?
Yeah, and the financial disaster that he brought the LA Archdiocese, $1.5 billion. Yeah,
actually, it's on the upwards of $2 billion. And he still gets the cost. It's like honoring the guy that covered up for Jeffrey Epstein. Bring him in, you covered up for pedophiles, but you have a neat hat and a great outfit, and you're 91 years old. Here you get to close the Pope's deal. Get out of here.
He really closed the casket.
He really closed. That was his role. He witnessed the closing of the casket and closed the casket. So, nice. Whoa, great. Was he carried out by pedophiles? I mean, obviously that didn't happen, but I mean, it's despicable. There's no other words for it.
It is, and it makes me question everybody in the hierarchy, that nobody had the power, the influence, the good sense to say, no, not that guy, almost anyone else. Why that guy? He was the most notorious in the nation. Because
they've all done it. They've all covered up. And nobody wants to say it, but it's the truth. And, some are better than others, and there's definitely been improvement, largely because of the few prelates that have gone to jail in this country, but and the liability, but it's still a troubled organization and a troubled culture where you would allow somebody who let children be savaged close the Pope's casket in the most public ritual in the history of the church. It's sickening.
Well, John, I'm so glad you still speak out on this, because it should never be forgotten, and I'm never going to stop either, because
thanks, man.
Obviously we still have a big issue here.
Yeah, we do.
All right, John. Thanks for coming on.
See you at Mass.
Pray for me. John Manley, he is the attorney that represented so many of the victims of the child sex abuse, child rape committed by priests, covered up and enabled by Cardinal Mahony. And you could see, and after 91 years, and he spent about 25 years now in disgrace, Mahony is still honored by the highest circles of the Catholic Church in Rome. John's law firm is Manley, Stewart, and Finaldi. All right, we've got coming up after 2.